Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us today. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli. Rich Scheben's with us. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vincent Finelli. How are you doing this morning?
Great. You know, I'm looking out the studio window, and I'm looking at where our, parts of our driveway used to be. We had an inch and a half of rain, torrential rain, overflowed the gutters. Leaders couldn't take the water away fast enough. The gutters overflowed and raced across our farm, washed out some roads. But you know what? If you're prepared for that, it's no big deal. It really isn't. It's if you have food in the refrigerator and you have food in the cupboards, and you've got drinking water, not a big deal, right? You just wait out the draining of the water, and you're good to go. But so after the broadcast, one of the things I'm going to do is get out the front end loader and see if I can find where our driveway went, and put it back. But that's just what you do.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it sure as heck beats plugging in an app to see if you can figure it out. We have to, the little guy, the bottom 93% of income earners, Vince, we have to start not just thinking outside the box, but simplify our thinking regarding the basics: food, water, shelter, and relearn a lot of those lost 19th century skills to dovetail with today's technology. And it's pretty obvious that the middle class is losing ground, and we have to build our skill sets. And I'll tell you something, when you have a little bit of land, there are some chores that come with it. Now, while I was waiting for the show to come on this morning, I was on the porch playing my banjo and spitting tobacco off the railings and just waiting for you to come. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding, folks. There's a lot to do when you own land, but it's fun. And even though we do use the term chores, I often use the term playing in the garden, hunting and fishing. Even though a lot of you might think it's work, it's actually fun, just like harvesting edible medicinal plants. I love taking care of the animals. Feeding the animals on a regular basis is a joy. In fact, I'm looking out the window right now. We just had our last female Nigerian dwarf goat give birth to twins a couple days ago, and they are kind of jumping up and down, testing their legs, and I call it the grasshopper jump, what they're doing. And then they start in about a week doing the bucking bronco jump. And it truly is a pleasure. It really is joy being in this lifestyle. And the skill sets that you acquire, especially for gardening and even little things like fencing. I mean, when you really think about it, everything, Vince, has a procedure. Everything has a technique and a learning curve. And for those of you who live in suburban America and mow your lawn, you know what I'm talking about. When you first mow a lawn, it might take double the time it takes compared to when you've been living there for years or even months, because you create a certain procedure of going a certain way and being more functional by doing it. So there's a learning curve for everything. It's a fun lifestyle. I wouldn't trade it for the world, Vince, and I know you wouldn't either. And I know you're looking at going off-grid totally somewhere, but in the meantime, It's a great lifestyle, isn't it, Vince?
Yeah. One of the things that I really like doing is, I'll look at the dogs, and we'll be outside on the veranda, and I'll say, who wants to go for a walk? And the dogs get all excited. They know what that means. That means Mrs. Finelli and I are going to take a walk, maybe through the fields or down the driveway or around the property, and the dogs get all excited, and all of them follow us. And then when the dogs follow us, the cats don't want to be left out. Literally, it's 4 cats. So the cats and the dogs are they're all following us, and then the chickens don't want to be left out. And I kid you not. So when we go for walks, it's the dogs, the cats, and the chickens. Literally, everybody gets along.
You should take a video of that, Vince, and post it on your website.
Well, if I ever put the website back on, yeah, I'll do that. But our son took a video of a really neat thing. So our farmhouse is surrounded by woods, and it's kind of thick right now with the leaf growth. And so we have 2 calls for our cows. One is, come on, and then they all moo and come running because they know they're going to get fed. Okay. The other one is, hi, girls. And so, and our calls are different from everybody else's. They have way different calls for their animals around here than we do. So our animals respond to our calls. Now, the hi, girls means we're just here, just want to let you know we're here, but you're not going to get fed. The come on, that means you're going to get fed. So they know the difference. And so we have a video, and I may post it. Our son said, hi, girls, and then you can't see the cows, but all of a sudden, all through the woods surrounding the farmhouse, you hear all the cows mooing. And it's like a symphony of cows mooing. And it's the neatest thing. And so where else would you see that except on a farm, right, or a ranch?
Absolutely.
But it's delightful. It's absolutely delightful. So one of the things that happened last week, Mrs. Finelli and I went to a junk store, and that's Joey's term. Joey calls it junk stores. It's one man's trash is another man's treasure. Well, probably 30 years ago, 25 years ago, they used to make these swing sets, and they had these awnings, so you could have 3 people sit on them, and they're kind of like a porch swing, but they have a frame. And there was one of these at Habitat for Humanity for sale. And I said to Mrs. Finelli, we should buy that. And she was all excited because we had our truck. And we bought this senior citizens swing set. And it's on the veranda, and it's the neatest thing because we'll go out there and we'll have a cup of coffee. The dogs will sit at our feet. The cats will jump on our lap, and the chickens will be there too. It's the relaxation points that you get for doing that. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like watching television. It's not like anything else. You're outside in the rays of the sun. You can feel the breeze. You can see nature. We've got our animals there. The cows are out, they're not right next to us, but they're maybe 300 feet away, in the woods. It's wonderful. You can hear the frogs. You can see a few birds, the ones that are still alive, that we haven't killed off with insecticides and herbicides. It's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to protect this kind of a lifestyle. So I think what you're saying is you're advocating it. And for anyone who is willing to do the chores, learn how to do the chores faster, better, smarter, and who's willing to take care of themselves and not be at the mercy of someone at the other end of the phone, like the road washed out, come fix it, where you actually do that yourselves. You cut your own firewood. You are in charge of your own destiny. And I think that's what you're saying is as good as it gets. I believe that's what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely. The cookie cutter follower politically correct subdivision garden apartment mentality is not making people happy. You see so many people on social media, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, or all the others. I've never been on any of them. No need to. These people are so easy to manipulate. People don't realize that the powers that be are literally using people to create winners and losers, and to tell people who to hate and who not to hate. And basically, the more submissive you are, the less information you have, and the more you're able to distract people, the powers that be are giving more kudos to those people. In other words, when you live rural, you have the ability not just to control your own destiny a little better, but to be a thinker and not be a follower. Vince?
Our daughter at one time had a house in the East Coast, and she bought this house, and it was a nice house in a nice neighborhood, and everybody had like a third of an acre or so, maybe more, maybe a half an acre. And she bought it and moved in, and within, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so, she got a letter in the mail from the Homeowners Association that she was going to be fined unless she repaired the screens on the front windows of her home. And so she wrote back, "What are you talking about?" So what's the problem with the screens? Well, the screens didn't match, and some of them were not installed properly, and they were on funny angles. You know, they weren't square with the windows. And so the Homeowners Association, in order to prove their case and levy this fine against our daughter, sent her a picture of the house with the screens mangled. And she said, "When did you take that picture? Come look. They've never been like this as long as I've owned the house." Well, what they dug up was an old picture of the former owner. So our daughter was going to be fined hundreds of dollars from this stupid civic association or homeowners group that was going to fine her for something she didn't do, wasn't part of, and didn't own the house at the time. So as long as she owned it, the house was fine. So bad information, and they were going to fine her. That's the kind of nonsense that you have to put up with if you live in a development. Now, near us, I'd say within maybe 20 or 30 miles, there's this farm, and this guy decided that he was going to plant, flower vases on his front yard, or flower pots. But instead of flower pots in the traditional sense, I think he was a plumber, and I think he collected toilets. And so he had on his front yard probably 50 multicolored toilets, the blue ones, the yellow ones, the pink ones, the white ones, the beige ones, the tan ones, scattered out throughout his lawn with plants in them. And if you don't have a homeowners association, that's something you might find. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. And class, I'm not trying to put a damper on living out in rural America, because I think it's the best place you can live. But I just want you to be prepared for what happens when there's no building code enforcement, where there's no code enforcement whatsoever. So you might find that there's a place that's got toilets in the front yard as a planting. You might find that. And on our road, you'll find a house that's falling down. It was built probably around 1890. It hasn't been lived in probably for 40 or 50 years, and it's falling down. I mean, it is falling down. There's no windows. The roof is starting to cave in. It's been ransacked. The doors have been stolen. Animals live in there, and it's maybe 100 feet off the road. So if you're driving down our road, you'll see it. It's not ours. It's not on our property. It's on a neighbor's property, but there it is. And then if you go down the road a little farther, you might find a brand new, well, maybe a few years old, a storage shed. Literally a storage shed that you can buy and have delivered on your property, setting on some gravel. And someone converted that into a home, a storage shed. I'm not kidding. And then you might find a little farther down the road a trailer home. And when I say a trailer home, I'm talking about, something that is probably, if you were to sell it, you could probably get $300 for it because of the scrap iron underneath it that's holding it up. Other than that, it's worthless. So you'll find that, and you'll find that people are living in those kinds of homes when you don't have building code enforcement. Now, would I prefer to have everything neat and orderly and maintained by the threat of the government corporation? Absolutely not. So if you choose to live in the countryside, it's almost anything goes. Now, of course, you want your neighbors not to change their oil on the dirt and have that used motor oil end up in your water supply. So you kind of have to look around and make sure that people are smart enough not to do that. But some people do that. Some people will pull over on the road and pull the drain plug out of their car and let the oil run onto the dirt roads. They do that. So, word to the wise, is pay attention and look around before you buy a property. But the bottom line is, the fewer the people in the area, the better I like it. What do you think, Rich?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you. When you look at the mass exodus out of California, Illinois, and the Northeast states, I mean, we've talked about this. New Jersey has a rain tax. So when you look at taxes and insurance, when you look at maintenance and codes and restrictions, it's pretty obvious from the bottom line, the dollar sign, people are leaving urban, suburban area. And, I mean, I got 3 articles right here. U.S. price growth, slowest since 2012. These 40 cities could be on the brink of a housing crash, and U.S. industrial production tumbles. So as people have less savings and they get more debt, they get more desperate, and they want to be out of urban, suburban areas. That's exactly why this mass exodus is happening in so many parts of the country. Like Montana right now, we're number 1 in hemp production, number 1 in telecommunication, or telecommuting, which is basically working out of your home on your computer. In fact, Northwest Montana, I just read a week ago, just passed Bozeman as far as number 1 for growth. So people are starting to look outside the box, think outside the box, and vote with their feet, because government, unfortunately, never gets smaller. It only gets bigger. And the restrictions and the codes and the taxes and the insurance and the maintenance is directly proportional to the size of the structure, just keeps going up. And to avoid, when you talk about the shacks and the toilet bowls out in people's yards, I'll be honest with you, most people around here really don't care much, especially if you have what's called end-of-road privacy. For those of you, it doesn't matter what state you're buying in, folks. What I mean by end-of-road privacy, this is very important. End-of-road privacy means there's no easements running through your property. That means you have an easement through other people's property. So if you go and buy shacks or whatever in people's yards, you don't care, because by the time you get to your place at the end of the road, you keep it as you would like. And we'll be back right after the break.
Yeah. Rich Scheben, offgridmontana.com. Rich Scheben and I are talking about moving to the countryside and some of the things you might find. It's maybe a little disconcerting to the uninitiated, but, I'm okay with buildings that are not really aesthetically pleasing around me. It keeps the property values low. I don't really want to have my taxes raised because of high property values. I don't want to do that. So if you're willing to agree that people can build what they want, where they want, the style they want, or the lack of style that they want, in your neck of the woods, if you're willing to agree to that, you can live in a low cost of living area. Now, if you want everything prim and proper and straight and plumb, and you want all the angles perfect, and you want the paint perfect, well, you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it because of code enforcement and higher taxes. And if you want an example of that, just look at California, where people pay about or more than 1% of the value of the property. So you can easily spend $10,000 a year on a modest home's real estate taxes. Now, modest by the East Coast standards or Midwest standards, probably lavish by California standards. And I'm talking about maybe a home that is 1,500 square feet on a concrete pad a ranch-style house, California ranch, it might cost $1 million for that with $10,000 a year real estate taxes. $10,000 a year real estate taxes. Heck, in the country, for $10,000, you might be able to get 7 acres and own it. Literally. So, but you've got to get past the lack of enforcement and the lack of, police. If you live in an area that has low taxes, there aren't a lot of cops there because you're not paying for a lot of cops. The school systems are probably not as good as you might really want, but there's always homeschooling. So if you're willing to put some elbow grease into the equation, as we have, I'm not recommending you do anything that we didn't do, but we homeschooled our children. We build our own buildings. We maintain everything. We bought a property that was run down, and we fixed it up. It's way nicer than it was when we bought it. But it took a lot of work. So if you're willing to do that, you too can move to the countryside. But don't expect to call somebody to do the things that you would expect them to do if you lived in a neighborhood. If you want the dishwasher repair guy to come out, it's going to be on Tuesday. Next Tuesday, not this Tuesday, next Tuesday. It's not going to be tomorrow. And it's certainly not going to be this afternoon. That's just the way it is. And you'll have a septic system, and you'll be responsible for maintaining it. You'll have to figure out when to pump it out, and you'll have to chlorinate your well, shock your well, disinfect it. It's on you. But the nice thing is, you won't have all those additives. If you put chlorine in it, you know when to flush it out and get rid of the chlorine. You're probably not going to be putting fluoride in it. You're in charge. If you want to heat the house, if you have a wood stove and you don't feel like cutting wood, that's no problem. It's just going to be cold.
That's right.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Vince,
you don't have to.
I'm looking at an article here, buddy. It's on Zero Hedge right now, folks. For those of you who are in front of your PC. And by the way, here in northwest Montana, we have the fastest internet in the land because we didn't have to break up old infrastructure to put in new. So that's something to keep in mind also. But the article I'm referring to on Zero Hedge is existing home sales tumble year over year for the 14th month. Worst run since housing crisis. So when you look at the fact that 90% of people live in urban suburban areas, obviously when you see data like this, this comes from urban suburban areas. And keep in mind, I know so many people, Vince, that live in, whether it be in subdivisions or apartments, they're bored. And what happens when you're bored? You go out more. You go out to dinner. You go out and do this. You go out and do that. Because you're bored. So what happens when you go out more? You spend more. Versus putting elbow grease, as you said it, Vince, into your property, maybe cutting down some dead trees, maybe parking out some areas, maybe creating view sites, maybe putting up fences for your animals and greenhouses and garden sites and things like that. And I want to make a quick comment, too, before I move on to there's a little more information on this subject. When you talk about homeschool, I've read a lot of information on this. There's so many details and information where kids who are homeschooled, for the most part, there's exceptions to every rule. They basically have better listening skills, better communication skills, better work ethic, better study skills. But one criteria that doesn't get talked about much, and maybe it's not in a lot of literature, and it's probably because it's being blocked because the powers that be want your kids to be socially and politically indoctrinated in the public/government schools, and that is a very important characteristic or criteria, and that is kids who are homeschooled get out of debt earlier in life. Let me say that again. Kids who are homeschooled get out of debt earlier in life. And basically, that means that they are taught certain skill sets, whether it be math or financial literacy, that they don't get in public schools. Because the Keynesian economic structure, procedure, is that's basically what a debt-back system is. And as you know, on this show, we've talked about this in great detail. And when people are bored, what else do they do? Well, the average person in America watches television and their smartphone for 7 to 8 hours a day. So we need to get back into the balance of life between nature and technology, and it makes people happier. Just like being serious and humor. You know, we've gotten to the point where, because of political correctness, people are afraid to even tell jokes anymore. Now, I just got a garage delivered, folks. We're still staying on this subject. I'm just going off into a slight tangent. I just had a garage delivered. It's a one-car garage. It's 12 by 24. It cost me $6,700. For those of you who are in northwest Montana, I bought it from Kaufman Builders. I'm not getting anything for it. He's not paying me. I'm not getting any barter. He did a great job. It's a beautiful garage. Now what people are doing is they're building things indoors year-round, and they're buying wood in bulk, and they have basically trucks, flatbed trucks, that can pick things up and drop things off and move at every angle. He showed me this truck. It can do everything but cook your breakfast in the morning. This is what is really happening. Now, I have a few contractors who are personal friends of mine, and I asked them for bids. They couldn't come within $2,000 to $3,000 of this guy. Okay? But I got a really nice garage with a metal roof for $6,700. He can move buildings up to 40 feet. 40 feet. Just so you know, my cabin, my log cabin, that if you go on offgridmontana.com, you can see it. My cabin is 30 by 40. The long end is 40 feet. Now, he can build these structures, and other contractors are doing this now in western Montana. They can build structures up to 40 feet long and deliver them for less than $30,000. So why would you go to a cookie-cutter follower, politically correct subdivision mentality and pay $350,000, $400,000 for a house on half an acre where you have no privacy, where you have HOAs, where you have no freedoms, where you can't probably cut down a tree, where maybe you can't even have a fire pit in your backyard because of covenants or rules or regulations or restrictions or codes or whatever, because you're in city limits? Why not buy a piece of land out in the country and have one of these guys deliver a structure? You know, this guy, he builds garages, barns, guest houses, shops. You know, one thing that I'm a real huge proponent of, especially whether it be a young person. Let me take the young demographic right now. This is what I would do. Now, I'm going to be 59 years old next month, okay? So I'm probably a little older than a lot of you listening. But that being said, if I was a young person today, instead of wasting my money on college where 90% of the degrees are worthless, I mean, I would definitely get some type of trade. But I would also buy a piece of land, grow my own food, raise my own animals, have a certain lifestyle that basically gives me freedoms and liberties that you can't buy in suburban, urban areas. And then I would live in like a small guest house. Have one of these guys like Kaufman Builders here in Eureka, Montana, northwest Montana, build a building, and you live in the guest cabin until your financial situation improves. Now, I've talked about this in the book. I've talked about this in talks. I've talked about this on the air. The only debt anybody should be in is house and land. House and land purchases only. Not furniture, not school loans, not cars, not vacations, not food. You know, the only thing you should be paying interest on is house and land. That is it. So if you were to buy one of these little guest cabins, live in it for a few years, if your fiscal situation improved, then you can make that little cabin your guest cabin for your family and friends when they visit.
Not only that,
if you lost, let's say you lost, things didn't go your way. Could be affirmative action, could be quotas, could be outsourcing, could be companies going overseas, could be the fact that we're in a deflationary, stagflationary environment, could be the Federal Reserve note loses value. You know, we talked about all this, and it could go. There's many more reasons. But let's
Rich,
say
we've got Kyle on hold. He'll be coming on with us right after the break, and then we'll continue this discussion. Rich Scheben, telling us how to do it. Kyle's been patiently waiting in the green room. Welcome, Kyle.
Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Really well.
Well, I am so glad there is sun shining today. Man, oh man, we have just had some really wet weather here, but I had to chime in. You know, there is so many things that people, if you have just the slightest spark of drive, you can learn and you can do without having to spend even a bunch of money. Rich, you just tweaked my conscience a little bit when you mentioned the size of the garage. My sons and I built a 12 by 24 cabin for my brother and his wife to stay in, to help my mom out right there on her property. We set it up on skids. It's solid, heavy duty, with a lean-to off of the side of it, sided completely, with a roof on it, and the cutout for a wood stove pipe going up through the middle of it. And the entire cost of the thing about 3.5 years ago was $1,700. Now that it did not include him insulating or wiring or, finishing the inside of it with paneling and stuff like that. But we had the structure up for $1,700. And so you can do that kind of stuff. When I started out as a young man, I didn't know split beans from coffee on how to build hardly anything other than I knew how to work on cars and I knew how to fix washing machines and dryers and stuff like that. That's really, and the rest of it has just been added on. I just learned it. And people, you can do that. I built 2 years ago. There was a young guy out here close to me, and I was starting to build a 12 by 14 garden shed. And I wanted full-size walls, and I built my own roof joists and everything on there. And this young guy just wanted to help. Well, I built the entire thing, and I built it out of plywood rather than OSB. I hate OSB. It's a type of in my opinion, it's a bunch of particles stuck together with glue that they sell for the substitute for plywood. But if you get it wet, it turns into a sponge. It's just terrible. I hate the stuff. But anyway, I built it out of plywood, roofed it, everything for under $900 complete. And it's solid. It's people, if it's not hard, there's so much that you can learn right now from YouTube. Folks, it's just, you might have to buy a chunk of property, especially if you move up here to northwest Montana. Prices on land up here are just going up through the roof, and they have been for years. It's just people are leaving those cities, but if you're going to leave the city, leave the mindset there too. Leave that mindset back. Like Vince was talking about the old boy growing plants in 50 toilets or whatever, You know what you call that up here? Freedom.
You mentioned mindset, Kyle, and, you've been here to my hobby farm, and we don't live very far apart from one another, but you live in the Flathead, and I'll use Whitefish as an example. Whitefish is like the foo-foo elite town, and we're only 45 minutes from Whitefish, but the average 20-acre parcel costs about $300,000. Here in the Tobacco Valley, just 45 minutes up the road towards the border, the average 20-acre parcel, I just talked to a few realtors, is about $130,000, $140,000. Now, keep in mind that If you go to the MLS, you're going to get a different number. What the smart realtors are doing, the ones who study and keep their ears to the grindstone and ask questions, is that private sales needs to be accounted for. Because the best land, like when I talked about earlier regarding private sales is usually the better properties, like end-of-road privacy, which here in northwest Montana in the Tobacco Valley, we only have about 5% of land that is end-of-road privacy, which means there's zero easements going through that particular parcel of land. And that is worth its weight in gold. So you got to do your homework, folks, and we'll talk about some specifics, and I'll get back into the...
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of the USA Prepares. Rich Scheben's with us, off-grid Montana. Kyle's with us on the phone. 2 USA Prepares instructors, 2 of my wonderful friends, dear friends. And class, the 3 of us think alike. And I've got to tell you that a lot of the things that we talk about, I get phone calls from other instructors, and we're all on the same page within just a couple hours of each other. I was talking with Joey last night about the same kinds of topics. Now, let me just put in perspective what Kyle said. Kyle, I think you've piqued a lot of interest. So I've never done either of these 2 things that I'm going to tell you about, but just as a comparison, class, let's say you were in the city or in the suburbs and you wanted to have a color-coordinated front-load washer-dryer set, with the pedestals, all set, up to $2,500. Kyle built a cabin for less than that. Right? How about granite countertops? I looked up the average cost of granite countertops. Now hold on to your hat. $23,334. Now this is not the cabinets. This is just the countertop. $23,334. You could get 14 of Kyle's cabins for the amount that you would spend on the average granite countertop.
It's unbelievable. Keeping up with the Joneses syndrome has gone. That's what's created so many bankruptcies and delinquencies, because people are over leveraged. Now, Vince, we have to put a little disclaimer or caveat in here. First of all, regarding Kyle, just think he's an electrician. He's lived off-grid, and now he has a hybrid system where he has off-grid and on-grid options, as you do. But, folks, there's certain criteria that it really depends on what your situation is. It could be capital resources, it could be skill sets, it could be willingness to change and adapt to a new lifestyle, it could be your age, it could be your health. But don't confuse criteria with excuses. Because if you were an electrician like Kyle, just think what you could do regarding off-grid living or live in a hybrid situation where you can control your own destiny and not be subjected to an EMP. But really what this lifestyle offers, it offers you options, but it offers you the frugality and the skill sets to live with less cost, which means less leverage, less delinquencies, less bankruptcies, things of that nature. Vince?
I've got a question for Kyle. So, Kyle, it seems like all 3 of us have done something very similar. I bought 33 acres, I believe, on top of a mountain in West Virginia, and the cost was $33,000. And we built a cabin on there. By the time we were done, we probably had, let's say, $50,000 with the 33 acres and the cabin and the well and a septic system, all for $50,000. Taxes, I believe, were in the neighborhood of $30 a year. Now, had I ever built a cabin before? No. Had I ever wired a complete building before? No. But what I did was I bought some books. I bought some books on plumbing, put in the plumbing system, put in all of it, every bit of it. Sheetrocked it, insulated it, wired it, built a kitchen, put in the cabinets. put in the floor, put in a heating system, put in a wood stove, a chimney, everything you could possibly think of that you would need, we did for about $50,000. So I bought the books on how to do it, and I read them cover to cover to cover many times, and then I started working on it. Worked on it with the family. Mrs. Finelli's on the ladder. We hung the siding, hardy plank siding, which is concrete board, fairly fire resistant. Actually, I don't think you can burn if you had to. Steel roof, the kind of things that you're talking about. But you have to have the desire. Kyle, what kind of skill set would you say a person would need to do what you've done, what Rich has done, what I've done? How would you look at that as a tradesman?
I think more than anything else, Vince, and I think you're going to say absolutely true when I say this, more than anything else, all you need inside of you is the desire to say, you know what, I'm not stupid, I can figure it out.
Absolutely true.
And it don't matter what it is. It really doesn't. And once you do, when I was a kid, I did not know much about automobiles. My dad taught me a few things. He was a little kind of a shade tree mechanic. But when it come to actually building, rebuilding engines or rebuilding transmissions or changing clutches and all that stuff, he didn't know much about a lot of that. He didn't know a lot about it, but he knew a little bit about a lot of it. And so I would tag along and I'd watch and I'd learn a little bit. And then when I grew up, I started doing a lot of it, because when you get a little bit under your belt, it gives you confidence to think to yourself, I figured that out. I can figure out X, Y, Z here. It just takes time. And it takes me, like you said, I've got a virtual bloomin' library, literally boxes and boxes and boxes of books on almost anything you can imagine, from smoking meat and everything to rebuilding engines, to wiring houses, to plumbing houses. I've got so many bloomin' books it ain't even funny. And just like you, I read it before I go try to do it, because whether you can remember it or not is irrelevant. If you've got a book, you can go back and reference. And things you learn about how to pound nails, you learn about, you don't say you've never used the air nailer. Okay, you're going to build something. Man, it saves you a bunch of time if you can afford about $200 for an air nailer and a small compressor. Oh, I don't know how to handle an air nailer. That scares the fire out of me, you might say. Well, look at it on YouTube. It's simple as pie. You just got to be a little bit careful. Don't be stupid, and you'll learn. You're going to make mistakes. And then you're going to tell yourself, man, what a dumb thing I just did. I guarantee you I've done that probably 100 times in my lifetime. What a dumb thing that was. But I guarantee you something. I didn't go back and do it again. It's just a matter of learning and adapting and the enjoyment factor. My wife and I, we just planted probably close to 200 plants and put seeds in the ground for another 200 at least more of different plants that we want to grow in our garden. And were we tired and sore and crackety, creakety for 2 days afterwards, 3 days even? Yes. But I'll guarantee you, when we see this stuff coming up, it is so stinking satisfying. Everybody looks and they're so wowed about all this stuff, but it really is nothing but desire, folks. It's just having the will inside of you to break out of the matrix that you've been raised in, the septic tank that you're used to get out and be able to smell some fresh air and enjoy life. Just like Rich has been saying, we don't have goats anymore. We did have goats, and we had horses and hogs and all of those things. We did a lot of that. Right now, what we really enjoy is our chickens and our ducks and our garden. And you can adapt to those things. I love my wife and I were laughing at Rich when he was talking about the little goats doing the grasshopper hop, and then they go into the buccaneer's hop, and we laughed about that kind of stuff. We used to love to watch the little horse colts hit the ground, jumping and kicking and running around, and the goats doing the same thing. Even the chickens, you watch these young roosters coming up, and they're trying to figure out who's tough and who ain't, and they're going to go figure out a pecking order on everything, and it's just great stuff. I've got a new pup now that's a mini Aussie. I love taking him outside and watching him learn and start smelling and watching and wanting to herd them chickens and run around run like his legs were on fire. It's just hilarious. Stuff like that makes life so much nicer. It's just so worth it.
You're absolutely right, Kyle. And just to put an exclamation point on what you said, when our son and I were building, he was 15 years old when we started building this house in Missouri, our farmhouse, I knew I was going to be pounding a lot of nails, and my favorite hammer is an Est-wing hammer. But I knew that I wouldn't get enough nails in fast enough. So I bought one of those air-powered framing nailers. It was $59, and I found a good deal on it. I bought that. I bought a 60-gallon cast-iron pump compressor for $350, and I bought the hose and the fittings for $20, a quarter-inch, really flexible 50-foot hose. And then I bought case after case after case of these framing nails. And we just went to town. And you're absolutely right. It saves so much labor, so much time. It was really cost effective. And do I think I can sell that framing hammer now for almost as much as I paid for it? Absolutely. Can I sell the compressor if I wanted to? Absolutely. So before we had a house, we had a nailer, a hose, and a compressor. Because I learned a long time ago that I used to buy the tools I needed after I did the job. After I did the job. I don't do that anymore.
Me either.
Isn't that true, Kyle?
That right.
But
that is so true.
Yeah.
I guarantee you do it wrong or you do it the hard way a few times. One of the advantages of age is that you can look at a job and say, crying out loud, if I had this or that or an impact driver or whatever, man, that'd make this job a lot easier. And boy, I'll tell you what, you just go for it.
Yeah, and if you plan ahead, and if you don't impulse buy, you can probably pay, I don't know, maybe 25% of what the guy who doesn't plan pays. Literally.
At least.
Yep. Kyle, would you like to stay with us?
No, I'll let Rich get on. I know he does a lot of prep for the show. I'll let you guys go. Thanks.
Kyle, thank you so much. Rich and I'll be right back. Rich Scheben's with us in Montana, offgridmontana.com. Mark in Western New York. Welcome. You're on with Rich Scheben and me.
Hey, good morning. I'll try to make it quick so Rich can get on with his diatribe. Hey, regarding the universal hydraulic fluid, that container, will it say anywhere on it that it was a Citgo product?
I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, but I can tell you this. If you do a search on Orscheln, let's see. Let me go back to exactly where I was. Give me just 1 second. ORSCHELN. ORSCHELN. And then 303. And then write false advertising. You'll find an article that it's at classactionreporter.com, and it'll tell you about the 303, we'll call that spec in quote, hydraulic fluid, we'll call that in quotes too, because it's really not. It's substandard petroleum. It is a real problem. Have you bought this yellow bucket garbage
no,
as well?
My neighbor has the yellow bucket with a green lid.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm not. It didn't say Citgo anywhere on it. Now I wrote down ORSCH. What's after that?
Okay. ORSCHELN.
Okay.
Orscheln, and it's called, and they have the nerve to say Orscheln Premium 303 tractor hydraulic fluid. It's also known as Mile Master 303 tractor hydraulic fluid, and it was sold in Missouri, and it's banned in Missouri. Orscheln is undergoing class action suit for false advertising. And this is, for me, I am furious. My question to Orscheln Farm and Home is, why did you do this to me? Now, I don't mean me, just Vincent Finelli. I mean, why did you do this to all of these individuals? How much greed do you need to have to sell a substandard product that will destroy our tractors, front-end loaders, bulldozers, and all backhoe, spreader trucks? I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment damage right here on our farm. It's an outrage.
It's not just the farmers either. I mean, how many people out there have gas-powered log splitters?
Yes,
no?
and probably those who have those zero-turn mowers that have hydraulic drives, or let's say a little Cub Cadet where you press on the go pedal, the forward pedal, and you start going forward. You press on the rear pedal, and it's got a hydraulic drive as well. So, and this is called like a universal hydraulic fluid, and it's not. It's absent the additives that prevent wear. So we were breaking hydraulic hoses like crazy. We had foaming. Our hydraulic fluid in our Deutz Fahr tractor would foam. And there's a plastic fill plug with a dipstick in the differential in the rear, right behind the driver's seat. And the hydraulic fluid would foam and come foaming out, kind of like you're making an overflowing latte. So class, that air doesn't lubricate very well. So if you have bubbles and foam as the lubricant, you've got metal to metal wear, fast wear. As a matter of fact, let me just say this: the reason that your owner's manual on your automobile engine, or your lawnmower engine, or your log splitter engine, or your rototiller engine, or any of these engines that are gasoline powered, 4-cycle, they tell you don't overfill the crankcase. Don't put too much oil in it. Don't overfill it. The reason is because the crankshaft and the connecting rods will run into that overfilled oil and it'll froth it up. And foam doesn't lubricate very well. But that's in an automobile engine. What I'm saying is this 303 did that. It foamed. Mark, would you like to stay with us and hear the rest of the story? Class, very quick comment. Mark in Western New York called, and he heard us talking about the yellow buckets of Orscheln/Citgo 303 hydraulic fluid. It's been banned in Missouri and 2 other states. Not because of EPA regulations, but because it didn't meet its claims. It contains DROM, which is dark, recycled, reworked oil mix, as well as line flush fluid, flushing the lines of oil production. This is a substandard product. We've been lied to. We've been fleeced. We've been hosed. We've been conned by Orscheln and Citgo. But O'Reilly sold this stuff. Walmart sold this stuff, and Smitty's and Tractor Supply sold it. So if you have this 303 alleged hydraulic fluid, or labeled 5-gallon buckets labeled 303 hydraulic fluid, be very careful and do a search on the internet. Do a search. I'm going to give you a phone number for the law firm to call, the one that I'm involved with. They called me. They found out that I called Citgo's engineers about the problems I was having with this hydraulic fluid, and I think there are 2 complaints to the Citgo engineers, and they found them One of them happened to be mine as a result of my frustration with this hydraulic fluid not working. Now, I want you to think about this. How would somebody figure out that the lubricant that you put in a tractor is not working? Well, I figured it out because of the number of failures that we've had. And I figured it's going to cost us $22,500 to flush all this material out of our equipment. But that doesn't include the damage that's been done to all of our equipment. I've got this crap in all of our equipment. Our tractors, our bulldozer, our backhoe, our spreader tractor. Spreader truck. When I say a spreader truck, I'm talking about a huge truck. A huge truck. Not a pickup truck. A huge truck that holds, tons and tons of lime to spread on our fields. It's in that too. So here's the number. 816-595-7721. And ask for Dirk Hubbard. Dirk Hubbard is the attorney who called me because he found my correspondence with the Citgo lubrication engineers, complaining, asking what the heck is going on with this fluid. So if you've got a yellow bucket of this stuff, get on board and let's take these guys down. And I mean it. I'm livid at Orscheln. Orscheln fleeced me and you. Who do they think they are? Let's take them down. And I mean it. I mean it. I hate it. I hate it when the little guy, the bottom 93%, is fleeced by the big guys. Let's take them down. I don't mean kill them, but I mean let's put them out of business. Let's get the CEO fired, the engineering staff fired, all the vice presidents fired, the board of directors disbanded, all without any compensation. Strip them of their pensions and perks. They all get nothing. They need to be fired immediately for fleecing us and causing damage, widespread damage across the United States of America, especially to farmers and people who use heavy equipment. I'm talking about road construction people. I'm talking about crane operators. I'm talking about all kinds of heavy equipment. These guys fleeced us. Citgo, owned by the state government. Rich, any comments before we continue?
Well, I would just like to finish the point I made a couple of segments ago, if that's okay with you.
Sure, please do.
Okay. I think there's so many reasons, folks, why we need to move rural and leave urban, suburban areas. First of all, 90% of people live urban, suburban. Just think what it would do to our GDP or whatever unit of measure they use for growth and helping out America. We have a huge pension crisis in a lot of these so-called blue states. There's an article here, illegal alien convicted of raping dog to death released by sanctuary state. I believe that this is in Oregon. So these blue indebted states, whether it be sanctuary cities or sanctuary states, basically anything goes. People that just want to be able to control their own destiny. When Kyle was on just now, he talked about a garden, which we talk about all the time. What about the pesticides and the GMO foods that you buy in the store, which contributes to DNA changes and cancer? What about smart meters and the health and privacy risk with that? I bet you most of the people listening to the show right now has a smart meter in their house or apartment. Or how about 5G technology flooding urban and suburban areas and the health risks with that? They mentioned a wood splitter was mentioned a couple times today, Vince. I have sometimes people have know different things and have different skills. I took my wood splitter over a week ago to get fixed. It's about a 10-year-old splitter, and the small engine mechanic who went to school for it could not figure it out. So I thought I was going to have to spend another almost $2,000 on it was a 10.5 horsepower, 28-ton wood splitter. Well, I took it to another guy who I just thought, his name is Kyle West. He lives here in Eureka, Montana, in northwest Montana. He took 5 minutes and figured it out that the rubber boot jack, if you will, that covers the spark plug had a hole in it. So he put insulation on the inside and put more rubber on the outside, and it works great. He spent 5 minutes and fixed it, where I had it for a week and a half at this other guy who couldn't pull it And it just shows that it's not that the other guy was bad or didn't have certain skill sets that Kyle West has. It's just that different people know different things. And I want to, Kyle, in case this gets back to you, I want to thank you very much for what you did. You saved me at least $1,800. Now, going back to what people are doing for land, Vince, the young can get one of these guest cabins delivered. They can put in a wood stove. They can insulate it while they're living in it, do gravity feed water. And if their physical situation improves, then they can make that their little guest cabin and build their main house down the road. What's really getting popular as well for the older retirees, they're building barns, like metal barns, putting an 800-square-foot apartment inside, and they're driving their RV, their fifth wheel, their trailer, whatever they're using, and doing a little travel around North America. And in the meantime, they have low taxation insurance because they're being taxed at a barn rate, and have their little apartment inside their barn so they can be semi-nomadic. So people are acquiring new skill sets, Vince. They are starting to think outside the box. They're trying to be debt-free. And they definitely want to have life and to have freedom and to avoid the bankruptcies and being over-leveraged. So I'm going to give a couple hints here because we don't have a lot of time. I'm going to shortcut some of the information I was going to give. It's so important, folks, if you buy a bigger chunk of land, let's say like a 20-acre parcel, if there's a little parcel, if you buy a 100-acre parcel, doesn't matter. If there's a small parcel adjacent to it, buy the small parcel. Let me tell you why. Because most states have what's called a property boundary realignment or readjustment. So if you buy, let's say, a 20-acre parcel and a 1-acre parcel, you can make that 2 10s if you want. You can do a boundary line readjustment and literally not have to go through subdivision review. And it doesn't have to be 2 parcels. It could be 3. It could be 5. And you can basically readjust or realign the property boundaries and make whatever size lots you want. And there's also there's so many different ways to avoid going through a subdivision review, because when you go through a subdivision review, these days in most states you got to have your roads up to engineering par. You got to have a certain width, a certain base, a certain gravel. You got to have your septics approved. Here in northwest Montana, if you have 20 acres, you don't even need an approved septic. You can just put your septic and your drain field and your well wherever you desire based on where you want to put your main house. So I think that's what a lot of people need to be considered, and a lot of realtors too, folks, are not, they grew up in urban, suburban areas, even here in Montana, and they use the term usable land. Okay, what usable land means, or what it implies, is that if it's not flat, you can't use it. That's the biggest bunch of hooey I've ever heard. You want as much varied topography as you can get. You want ridges, you want draws, you want rock, you want trees, you want places for animals to hide, you want different types of edible and medicinal plants that occur on northern slopes and southern slopes. It's not just views. You want varied topography. Even if there's no flat ground, I've seen people with a bulldozer or a backhoe easily make put a couple of foundations or home sites in very easily by doing that. So and I've seen beautiful, gorgeous gardens on southern slopes that are tiered. A home site does not take a big footprint. So I want you to keep in mind when realtors say usable land, don't let that scare you from looking at it, because it's just like walking into a home. Some people want it turnkey because they don't have the foresight, the ingenuity, the ability to see where you could put what. I want bare land so I can build where I want, what I want, and do it my way. And that's exactly what I did here. And that's one of the suggestions that I'm giving, especially to you young folks, in lieu of going to college and wasting your money, losing your ability to get time leverage on your assets, because when you come out and you're in debt, which is what the powers that be want, that's how you're controlled, then they make you rent for a few years because you got to pay back your school loans as well. Now, because of political correctness and outsourcing, all the things we've talked about over the years, it's getting tougher and tougher to find good jobs as we enter this gig economy. So think outside the box, folks. Think skill sets. Think animals. Think solar. Think off-grid. Think hunting and fishing. Think raising animals. Think growing your own produce. It's a great life. Vince?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about buying undamaged land, raw land, and make your own mistakes. We'll be right back. OffGridMontana.com. We're talking about raw land or bare land. I absolutely positively agree with Rich Scheben. Unimproved land, not damaged land. So when you're looking, look for land that, I wouldn't buy land that's been planted in corn or tobacco and all the nutrients have been withdrawn from the land. I would want varied rolling land. I'd like hills, valleys, so the water can run off. Now, let me share this with you. I know of a couple locations where people have springs coming right out of the ground. And it used to be, at preparedness expos, the instructors, I'm not talking about our instructors necessarily, but other instructors would say, that's what you want. You want water coming out of the ground. No, you don't. No, you don't. Because if you have water coming out of the ground, it's probably contaminated with bacteria. Absolutely. Okay? So you'd have to treat it all the time anyway. And then if you build your house at, where that spring is, if you put a basement in that location, it's going to flood. And you can't put a swimming pool, a concrete swimming pool in there either because it's going to crack. So when we built our house, we have it. It's in the Ozarks, and the land rolls. And we didn't put the house at the bottom of the hill. We put the house at the top of the hill. And we don't have problems with our basement flooding because it's higher than the water table. Now, as far as water, how do you get water? You drill a well. And then you can have good water. But, of course, you'll have to have electricity. But you'll have good water compared to rainwater or, running off the roof or springs. I don't know of a single spring that's not contaminated with biologicals. I don't know of one. Rich, any comments on that?
Well, all I know is we can't count on the system as too corrupt. There's 3 articles right here in front of me. It's on goldsilver.com. St. Louis Fed promotes still more free money for banks and hiding it all. Next article is Deutsche Bank death spiral hits historic low. Next article, China's on a long march signaling no end to trade war soon. Folks, the point is, do you really, in such a corrupt, manipulated society, where all the money from the little guy, the bottom 93% of income earners, has been funneled to the very super wealthy, and they basically haven't even worked. They monies that could help the people. It's kind of like the Army Corps of Engineers that spent $60 billion to protect New Orleans from a flood that may happen in the next 50 years to protect less than 400,000 people. And Trump's wall would cost about $6 billion only compared to $60 billion to protect over 330 million people from crimes that are happening now, not to mention all the excess costs and the drugs and the murders and the rapes. I mean, we lose, 80,000 people a year to drug use? I mean, my point is, folks, we're going to have to vote with our feet. We can't count on the Fed. We can't count on the corrupt system. It's all designed to keep you as slaves, to keep you under their finger. It's designed to surveil you, to censor you, and we are living in a big bubble for just about everything, which we've talked about in great specificity on this show. The point is we need to start thinking differently. We need to start regaining those lost 19th century skills and dovetailing them with 21st century technology, because everything is being held up by phony. Everything is false. All the information is for hire. And we need to start going back to thinking about the basics. Being debt-free, gaining skill sets, food. And the average American has, 9 days or 9 meals of food? That's definitely unacceptable. So we need to start thinking differently. Vince?
Quick comment. You and I have been advocating make your own mistakes. Buy land and build your own home, whether you hire a contractor, but go through the plans, make sure you get it the way you want it, versus buy someone else's mistakes. I have yet to see another house that was built properly. I haven't seen one. I haven't owned one. The only one that comes close is the one that I'm in. I haven't seen yours, Rich, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty darn good. But would you agree, make your own mistakes?
Absolutely. It's called learning curve.
Yeah. And you'll make very few of them, class, if you take your time and you do the research.